Our first big story was on the misuse of unmasking.
And there are important issues that need to be answered here. And the story that we broke today, if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, you should be really concerned how easy it is today that large numbers of members of the government, for a very low threshold, can ask the NSA, hey, if you intercepted John Solomon or Sean Hannity, could you unmask his name? Because we're trying to understand this intelligence.
Carter, we broke the story on Sean's show. And then I drove home. It was about 11 o'clock at night. I pull into my driveway, and I remember it like it was yesterday because my wife looked out the window. When she saw the government car parked outside, she closed the window and left me out there by myself, which I always laugh about. But I pulled into the driveway, opened up my garage door, and these two gentlemen come out of a blue sedan with government license plates. 11 o'clock at night, I thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble with something. And they came up to me and said, "You're Mr. Solomon?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "You're at the tip of a very large and dangerous iceberg." I'm like, "What in God's name are you talking about?" "Well, the story you were writing on tonight, the unmasking story." I'm like, "It's an intelligence abuse story." Like, "No, there's something much larger. You need to keep digging, man." Like, what are you talking about? And like, "Well, we can't tell you much because most of what we know is classified." "Okay, tell me what you can say." And there is a misuse of the most awesome powers that we unleashed after the 9/11 period to protect Americans from terrorism, to protect Americans from intelligence threats, spies and Chinese actors. We're now turning them against the American people. You look back at that moment and you realize that the terrorists of 9/11 had a far more profound effect on our American society than we appreciated. We were so scared that a bunch of 19 ragtag terrorists from Saudi Arabia and run by a Pakistani guy inspired by a Saudi dissident named Osama bin Laden could carry off such a spectacular plan against the most mighty country, against the most mighty city in the country, against the greatest two-tower symbols of economic superiority, the World Trade Center, and the most important five-sided building in the world, which was the emblem of our military might, the Pentagon. I mean, these guys took out the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, 19 guys who, barely knew anything about America. They just flew planes into it. It so shocked our sense of superiority, our sense of security, that we were willing to trade in some freedom for security or peace of mind. And that trade for freedom gave rise to a massive bureaucracy. The massive bureaucracy gave power to new massive powers, the Patriot Act and the FISA expansions that went way beyond what FISA was originally meant to do in the 70s.
So the global war on terror, in a sense, the target of the information warfare was easy to identify. It was jihadis. It was people that were fighting American soldiers on the battlefield. It was terrorists. Once that ended, they needed to create a new demand for their services. One of those new demands was saying, wait a minute, we have domestic terrorists in the United States, or potential domestic terrorists. They're not actually blowing things up like the jihadis were. They're not actually calling for violence against the United States as the jihadis were, but they may potentially down the road be terrorists. So these government agencies started identifying people that had, somewhat radical views or views I certainly don't share that are sort of out there, but there was no actual violence, demonstrated violence behind them, and yet, just as a precautionary measure, they argued that we needed to now start censoring these people.
I had developed a group of sources at this point beyond those two guys that showed up in my driveway to a large number of people in the FBI who clearly understood that their agency had been abused and misused in the Russian collusion case. And I was getting sort of a last document dump from these sources in December of 2018, and I would get a packet of documents. And this one wasn't government documents, it was sort of a narrative. And the first half of the narrative was, here's the rest of the Russia collusion story that you might be able to put together, really strong, good leads. And then the second part was, there's this guy named Hunter Biden. And if you dig into him, this guy is in all sorts of corrupt things for his father, and there's a good chance his dad's going to run. And they've run these schemes since Joe Biden was vice president. It was extraordinarily detailed. And there were references to documents that only recently came out, but I knew about in December of 18. And so I went to my bosses. It was Christmas week. I remember it. And it said, once we finish up this Russia collusion thing, I think there's a story here.
I'm Chanel Vian. I served for 2 years as chief White House correspondent under the Trump years and 2 years under Biden's White House. I think this was the second or third laptop he had lost at this point, because he had lost several devices overseas. You know, in the hands of Russians, the hands of Chinese, he's lost several devices. This one, luckily, was dropped off at a Delaware repair shop, a computer repair shop. And the repairman wasn't able to get a hold of Hunter Biden. The story goes that, as he was trying to repair it, it was considered abandoned property because Hunter Biden had not come back to retrieve his laptop for a long period of time. And so this repair shop owner was able to get into the laptop, look at it, try and fix it. And apparently he ran into some illicit material.
The president's son and his company brought in about $11 million between 2013 and 2018, working as an attorney, a board member to a Ukrainian gas company accused of bribing a prosecutor, and for a joint venture involving a Chinese businessman now accused of fraud. The records show Hunter Biden's company received nearly $5 million in consulting contracts from that joint venture funded by a Chinese energy company. A snapshot of Hunter Biden's spending shows that for about 5 months in late 2017 and early 2018, he spent more than $200,000 a month on things like luxury hotel rooms, cash withdrawals, dental work, and payments on a Porsche, according to documents on the hard drive.
There was so much in it, and so much I wish I didn't see. This laptop showed emails between Hunter Biden and oligarchs and individuals from around the world, and his father at the time was vice president, and there were some very sketchy, if you will, interactions between Hunter Biden and business deals that would take place in China right around the same time that his father, the vice president, was flying out there. Diamonds and gifts were being given to Hunter Biden, and all in ostensibly exchange for these high-powered individuals to get a picture with Joe Biden, or the possibility of, potentially firing troublesome officials, like in Ukraine.
Broke the very first story, Ukraine, that President Joe Biden had bragged on this videotape that he had shut down or threatened to hold $1 billion back unless they fired the prosecutor.
I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money.
That prosecutor just happened to be investigating his son Hunter in Ukraine. And that story hit like a nuclear weapon. I mean, all of Washington jumped on it. And I was at The Hill, which is a pretty well-respected mainstream news organization. And for 2 months, the New York Times and ABC News, you can go look at this, they all matched my story. They all said it was true.
And that is why tonight I stand before you to officially launch my campaign for a second term as President of the United States.
I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
Joe Biden is taking aim at President Trump as he kicks off his 2020 presidential campaign. The former vice president held his first rally yesterday in Pittsburgh.
The single most important thing we have to accomplish is defeat Donald Trump.
The former head of the CIA, the former acting head of the CIA, Mike Morell, who is at the CIA during the formation of this growth of intelligence and the idea that intelligence's job is to suppress misinformation, himself creates one of the greatest intelligence community intrusions on an American election in history. He organizes a letter that falsely calls Hunter Biden's laptop disinformation when his own agencies know it was real because they had already validated. They possessed it for a year.
Later on October 22nd, when Biden appeared in the second presidential debate and was confronted with the facts of the Post reporting, he said to Trump,
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan.
but it was not, and he knew that. Now, fast forward to this year, 3 years later. Just last spring, House investigators revealed it was a call by now Secretary of State Antony Blinken to former acting CIA Director Michael Morell that prompted the spy letter published by Politico, which bypassed agency approval processes that would have been normally applied.
That made it very clear that they were going to use outright censorship. It's not just soft censorship, was when they banned any reporting before the 2020 election of the Hunter Biden laptop story. That thing got pulled off the internet. Anybody who shared it and talked about it could get their accounts shut down. I remember at a point where if you had the link and tried to share the link privately in a direct message on the social media platforms, it wouldn't send the link. The link would not go through. There were certain links you couldn't even send. They were blacklisted, I guess, by the servers. And so we all became very aware of very rampant censorship very quickly.
Well, the Hunter laptop story and the suppression of that and the censorship of it was naked election interference, election rigging by government agencies and their lackeys in social media.
Your average user probably didn't realize that this was so coordinated until Elon Musk bought Twitter and released what were called the Twitter files.
In the 3 months since, Musk has released an incriminating stream of internal documents revealing what some experts assess to be proof of shocking government censorship at the highest levels.
We found out that there were government agents embedded within Twitter that were contouring those policies.
And the Twitter files were this project that Elon Musk took on when he purchased Twitter, where he allowed reporters like Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss and Michael Schellenberger to come in and actually read the communications between government agencies and Twitter executives and Twitter engineers, where we discovered a very granular level of government censorship.
And when you look at how it began and the funding mechanisms, all of that unfortunately began during COVID under President Trump. Now, do I think Trump encouraged censorship? No, but you had these deep state agencies who thought, well, given COVID and all, we can just pursue whatever we want. And anyone who gets in the way, we're going to steamroll over.
We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
And it's important, first of all, to stay home.
The U.S. is now reporting more COVID-19 deaths than anywhere else in the world.
It's unlikely the virus leaked from a lab in the Chinese city, something that's been the subject of conspiracy theories.
Now, the reason why people bring up COVID so often when it comes to this kind of stuff is the arrogant certainty exercised by a lot of the pro-enlightened censorship people during that period. I always imagine this sort of counterfactual. Imagine if at the beginning of 2020, people came out and said, wow, there's this disease, it seems to have a long incubation period where you're asymptomatic. One thing we know is that's really bad because it's really hard to stop something like that. However, we don't know a great deal else about it. We have some general parameters, we have some ideas, but we are still doing experiments. In the meantime, exercise caution. Instead, what happened was this kind of burst of certainty, as if the government and the elite in the United States all understood everything about what COVID was and how you stop it.
Very early on, we started offering prayer because that's what a church can do. We could offer prayer. So we prayed for about 2 million people globally from within our Instagram and Facebook page of the World Church. And this exponentially grew our page. And this meant that all of that volume, all at once, I believe, received a higher level of attention from the reviewers and the people who were checking for content, whether to allow it, not to allow it, to take it down, and so on and so forth. So we started having some of our ads take down. We were just offering prayer. And because the word COVID was present, the ads were taken down. And then some ads were allowed. So we started changing the language, not using the word COVID, not using these trigger words that would become problematic. And again, we never imagined having to think through these words that were perfectly applicable if another human was reading it, but because the algorithms are reading it, algorithms in the text, algorithms in the images, and now we're being censored by algorithms.